I would say in terms of reshaping America, the central truth of the second Trump administration is the first Trump administration the president was surrounded by buffers. And in the second Trump administration, he's been surrounded by amplifiers. So a lot of the traditional checks and balances as a result have not been in place. And the president's gone a long way, most prominently in imposing tariffs on his own whim, basically, that will be challenged this week in the Supreme Court, his right to do that. But he's basically pushed out the boundaries on every single issue, whether it's shooting boats out of the water in the Caribbean, imposing tariffs, taking apart institutions that were funded by Congress, like USAID. He's pushed his agenda to the edge. Now we're going to find out a little bit tomorrow in our election that will only be for certain, mostly state seats. Some early indication of how the public feels about this. His polling is down a lot. His approval rating. But from a point of view of Taiwan and my friends in East Asia, the biggest thing obviously has been his tariff policy, and particularly with China. And I'm very much of two minds on this question. Some things are true even if Donald Trump believes them. And one of the things that is true, I believe, is that we needed to have a very serious tariff policy toward China at a time when the Chinese government has decided, even in the face of a terrible housing crash and a crash in domestic spending in China, that it was going to double and triple down on investing in factories for exports, basically. China already manufactures about one of every three products in the world. And I don't think that is sustainable. I don't think it's healthy for China or for America or for the world. And therefore, I support what President Trump did in his first term. And in principle, in his second term on raising tariffs, but I totally do not support the way he's gone about it. I believe that the best way to deal with China is with a comprehensive strategy that would have several components. One is you do it quietly. You do it even secretly. You don't embarrass the Chinese leadership by just waking up on one side of the bed one day and calling for 145% tariffs and then down the next. I think this should all been done very quietly and secret, number one. Number two, if you're going to impose tariffs on China, you better understand what assets President Xi has in order to come back at you. I believe Trump started this tariff war without understanding rare earths or magnets and China's complete domination of those two industries and its ability, if it wanted, to literally shut down manufacturing everywhere, advanced manufacturing, certainly across the United States. And so that's another issue that I think they failed at. The third issue that I think is very important is if you're going to engage China, the second largest economy in the world, a population of 1.3 billion, you need allies. You need collective action. And Trump, instead of generating allies, basically put tariffs on all our allies and China at the same time. And I think that very much diminished his leverage. Lastly, you need a domestic strategy. While I believe in short-term tariffs, time-bound tariffs that give your own domestic industry time to grow and be able to be competitive against a country like China, the way to do that is to invest in research, invest in education, invest in attracting the highest skilled workers on the planet. And Trump basically rejected all three. He's slashed research spending at American universities. He's basically told some of the smartest people on the planet, particularly Chinese students, get off our lawn. You're not welcome here. And they have raised the cost dramatically for companies that want to import high-skilled talent to America with H-1B visas. So I find this just an incoherent strategy. Now, let me conclude this point by saying this. I believe that there's no more important relationship in the world than the one between the US and China today. And that I don't think you can explain the relative great power peace and prosperity that the world has seen since the late 1970s without the US-China relationship. It's been central to everything. And so I would be doing everything, if I were in power in Beijing or Washington, to say that the US president and the president of China, rather than meeting once every 6 months for 2 hours, I believe they should talk once a week. This relationship is too important to be left basically to 2-hour meeting twice a year. And all I would say in the end is to the hawks in both Beijing and Washington, if we really do decouple the US and China, oh my goodness, we will miss it when it's gone. There's been massive deregulation generally, for particularly the banking sector. Some of that's probably very healthy. To me, there's been a absolutely wrong-headed move to kill our domestic clean energy industry, both electric vehicles and wind, which I think is going to just cede that industry to China. And we will go as a country from importing oil from Saudi Arabia to importing basically clean energy tools from China. And we'll never stop for America. So I think that's a real mistake. For me personally as an American, what is most disappointing about Trump's presidency is that Trump wants to rule by division and not by addition. He is very comfortable being just president of half the country. And he treats Democrats as not the opposition party, but as the enemy, the literal enemy of the state and American values, and no different than other foreign enemies. And that's really unhealthy. We have a lot of big, hard things to do in America today, and big, hard things can only be done together. We may get through this administration. The stock market may hold up because you have this massive injection of capital spending into artificial intelligence infrastructure, but we will never realize our full potential with a president who believes that really only half the country is legitimate. People often ask me, Mr. Friedman, is the world still flat? In fact, I was in China 2 years ago for the Development Forum, and I was met at the airport by a young Chinese college student just to help me through the passport and whatnot, get my luggage. And we were sitting in a lounge and just waiting for my bag. And she said to me, is the world still flat? And I told her, actually, it's flatter than ever in the way I meant it and wrote it, which is to say more people in more places. We've created a platform where more people in more places can compete, connect, and collaborate in more ways on more days for less money with greater ease than ever before. And that platform has only gotten flatter since I wrote the book. When I wrote The World is Flat, Twitter was still a sound. The cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. Applications were what you sent to college. And big data was a rap star. Okay. All of those things were invented after I wrote the book. So I explained that to this young woman, that the world is flatter than ever. All the technologies that made it flat, fiber optic connectivity, wireless, now satellite, they're accelerating faster than ever. So I think she reflected on what I said, and then we moved on to talk about something else. Then after a few minutes, she came back and said, Mr. Friedman, I used ChatGPT last weekend. I said, and you used ChatGPT on a VPN from Beijing, and you're asking me if the world is flat? Okay. So all of these technological trends have only accelerated to a point where between connectivity, compute, and climate, basic climate change, we've become fused. My teacher and friend Dov Seidman likes to say, interdependence is no longer our choice. It is our condition. So we're either going to rise together or we're going to fall together. But baby, whatever we're doing it together. And I think it's very important that President Trump and President Xi both understand that the world is fused. There is no world I can imagine where China will thrive if America goes into decline, and where America will thrive if China goes into decline. So that's been my view, and I'm sticking to it, and I'm doing my best to try to diffuse tension and conflict between these two great powers, because I don't even know what we're fighting about, and I think that it'd be really healthy if both sides really took a step back, took a deep breath, and maybe went on a weekend retreat together. I don't think free trade is disappearing, but I think it's people put a lot of sand in the gears, but I don't think it's disappearing. People want to connect. Girls just want to have fun. That is the reality. And they're going to connect and they're going to trade, despite all of these things, I believe. We can really slow it down. We can muck it up at a huge cost to all of our societies. And maybe that's the point we're going through right now. We just have to try out all the bad ideas before we come back to some good ones. But where we're going right now is not good for China, not good for America, not good for Taiwan, not good for anybody. It will make the world less secure and much less prosperous. But we have a very important court case related to those tariffs coming up before our Supreme Court. The hearings, I think the first hearings are this Thursday, after which they'll rule. And the American Constitution and our trade laws never, ever gave the president the authority to say to Canada, we're cutting off all trade negotiations with you because a government, a figure in Ontario made a advertisement about Ronald Reagan, which we didn't like. We're not going to, we're going to impose certain sanctions on you because your prime minister didn't nominate President Trump for a Nobel Prize, or to tell Brazil, we're going to tariff you because your president wasn't nice enough to our president. This is crazy stuff. And I hope and pray that the Supreme Court will knock it down in the next couple of weeks. Unfortunately, he's unlike any other president. He is impulsive, unbounded, hyper-nationalist. I think he doesn't understand trade at all. He thinks tariffs are paid by you, not me. That's his first category error right there. And but at the same time, he's giving voice to a lot of Americans, many of them young men who identify with his virility, with his unboundedness, his willingness to say anything to anyone. At the end of the 4 years, we'll total it up. It's too early right now to judge what he's done and to see what he's learning along the way. My advice to Taiwan is don't make any sharp moves. This is a very tense time in world relations, particularly between the US and China. And if I were Taiwan, I would keep my head down, stick to my knitting, continue to run an amazing economy that you have, and just stay out of the line of fire. That would be my best advice. I'm not sure Trump would protect New York City if it were invaded, let alone Taiwan. So that's why if I were Taiwan, I would not be in a very adventurous mood right now. I don't think I have no real idea what President Xi's agenda or timetable are regarding Taiwan. But I think every year that goes by that he doesn't act on it is a good year. And so I would be doing everything I could not to put him in a position where he feels he has to act militarily. And I know that requires for Taiwan swallowing some both pride and aspirations. But just hang in there. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep building this amazing economy and keep making yourself indispensable for the global technology supply chain. Because that, I think, is your best defense. Because there's no replacing you. If someone, God forbid, China invaded Taiwan, I just don't think TSMC would be TSMC anymore. And so, I think you just got to be the best Taiwan you can be, but maybe the quietest too. Because the old days where you could be sure you had an American president who had your back, those days are over. Ask Volodymyr Zelensky. Really, at the end of the day, these are two giant powers, and Taiwan is a small island state. But if it's any reassurance to you, I don't think Trump has any illusions that he could sell out Taiwan, its freedom and democracy, to China and not go down in infamy as one of the most shameful presidents of the United States. There's a lot of people who would not be good with that. Obviously, if you're Taiwan, the strategy is to make yourself as porcupine-ish, that a hardline someone on the mainland would not want to lay a hand of you, and at the same time be as cooperative, peaceful, low-key, so no one actually notices you. That would be my dual strategy. I've always said Taiwan's one of my favorite countries, and I've always impressed what the Chinese people in Taiwan have built, from a barren rock in a typhoon-laden sea, basically. And my message is keep doing what you're doing. Nothing bad can come from that. That'll only give you more options.